crashed. And with that tidbit out of the way, I'd like to welcome in our guests who will be chatting with us this next hour. Joining us is criminal defense attorney Michael Beltran and trial attorney and federal litigator Alexis Rosenberg. Michael, I'm going to start with you. Is the line of questioning by Darrell Brooks getting any better to you?
Well, the last time I was on the show, he was not wearing a shirt. He wasn't wearing that much for pants, and he had his back to the camera, and he was on mute in a separate room. So there's some improvement from last time, and that was the other week. I think that was before opening. The judge was trying to have the charge conference, or at least the jury instruction conference, and Mr. Brooks was not happy to be there, and in fact, he was in a separate room. So anything is an improvement for that. It looks like he's in the courtroom. It looks like he's wearing a suit. It looks like he's at least semi-coherent. Obviously, we talked about last time a man who has himself for a lawyer as a fool for both an attorney and the client, and he should be using counsel, and he's not. He's entitled to counsel as everyone else is. So I think that's a blunder on his part, but nonetheless an improvement from last time.
But Alexis, there was a continuous arguing. It was all this morning between the judge and Brooks today. It was going on again. This is a continuing matter between them. How do these interruptions and small matters irk a jury?
Well, I mean, first of all, the worst case, like was just said, you don't want to represent yourself, even if you're an attorney. And I think that it slows down the process. It makes the jury frustrated because it's not going smoothly. This goes also with his objections that he's making. I mean, this what I call the Dennis Rodman defense is just ridiculous. Like he fell from the sky and somehow appeared here when we have this video and pictures. I think it's extremely frustrating to the jury, as well as which the judge has made very clear to the judge.
Alexis, anytime you bring in Dennis Rodman into a conversation like this, major props to you. I love it. Well, Brooks is right now on a 15-minute recess in court right now, so we're going to check in on that in a little bit. We're going to take a quick break here on Law and Crime, but when we come back, so much more to cover here. Stay with us.
I'm going to step off and give Mr. Brooks 5 minutes to cool off, and when that happens, I'm bringing the jury out,
angry at all.
And then we will
I just wanted
continue.
All right, there's really never a dull moment in that courtroom. And these types of exchanges are common now between the judge and Brooks. But Alexis and Michael, how much is too much? And how is this pandemonium taking away from the severity of this case? And that is 6 people were killed and 12 others were injured. Alexis, your thoughts?
I mean, it's very frustrating. And I have to say, even today, when we're saying that she kind of lost it with him, she was pretty calm because he was being entirely disrespectful. And it really is the Brooks show, opposed to the fact that we do have these innocent individuals that are dead. And that is truly what he is on trial for.
And Michael, can anything be done about these types of rants? And keep in mind, this rant we just saw was in the presence of the jury there. How bad of a look is this for him?
Well, the problem is this gentleman really has nothing to lose. He's committed a multiple homicide. When I go to court, I sometimes spar with the judge, but we stay within the rules, and I'm just making my record for appeal. And sometimes you may say something and the judge might react to that in a way that helps you in your appeal. So that's certainly not an uncommon strategy when your trial strategy is to preserve the record. However, in this particular case, the man's gone beyond all bounds of respect to the court, or even just speaking over each other and things of that nature. And I think it's fairly ineffective to the extent it's occurring before the jury. And I think that was what the judge was saying, essentially. If you want to argue with me, that's one thing. Arguing in front of the jury with the judge is frowned upon, which is why there were sidebar conferences, and the jury takes longer and more frequent breaks than the attorneys when you're trying a case. Again, this comes back to the dynamic of this court. First of all, you have somebody who obviously has a couple screws loose to begin with. Whether that makes him incompetent to stand trial, obviously the judge has determined that he's able to both stand trial and to act as his own counsel, so to speak. But it's certainly it's not a good situation. It's not good for the system, and it's not good for the defendant.
And by the way, Brooks's behavior towards witnesses and survivors of the crash seemed to be getting a little bit more hostile. Let's rewind a bit and take a listen to yesterday evening's cross-examination of Reverend Matthew Witter.
Do you recall when you knew for sure that you would be testifying in this matter?
I got an official word on October 1st to plan to be here, I believe, on last Wednesday.
And to the best of your knowledge, do you have any reason why you would be testifying on behalf of an injured party if you are not an injured party? Grounds.
Overruled. Can I answer? If he knows.
My thought would be that as the pastor, I would have a more wide-ranging kind of knowledge of different people's situations as a pastor, whereas some people might, that's what I would assume. But
You testified to observing quite a few injuries. How can you assess the injuries just by looking at the people?
can you clarify what you mean by that? Like, what are you getting at?
For example, if I was to see someone injured laying on the ground, I could essentially say, "Oh, it looks like this," but how can I be certain that that's what it is? So my question is, being that you observed a lot of injuries, how are you able to assess what they were just by looking?
Well, the question mischaracterizes his testimony, so I'm going to ask that you rephrase.
How did you know the injuries just by looking?
It still mischaracterizes his testimony. That's not what he said. He was asked about whether he was aware.
Yeah, that he observed injuries. So how could he know
He observed some, so you need to be specific as what point in
the
time.
injuries that you saw at the hospital? How were you able to say for sure what those injuries were just by observation?
Yeah, so some of it is seeing people at the hospital, and then part of it then is, so there's the immediate seeing people in the hospital, and then there's the later times of seeing people in the hospital or seeing people in other contexts.
So would it be fair to say that you were told those injuries either by medical professionals or by the people?
Exactly. So if people would say, "This is my injury," I would believe them. If they'd be in the hospital, if I see people with crutches, wheelchairs, then I would say that's probably accurate.
But you didn't know for sure yourself until you were told.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not the one diagnosing an injury. I can observe what they say, I can observe what I see, and then if I see people with crutches, wheelchairs,
that's
then
what
I'm
I was
like,
getting at.
there's probably truth there.
Do you know, because you testified to seeing those, some of those people after the incident, would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Do you know if any of the people you saw after the incident filed any claims in the matter?
Could you clarify by what you mean by claims?
Did they file for to be an injured party in the matter, or did they file for any medical bill support or anything of that nature? To your knowledge, do you recall any of that?
We certainly told as many people as possible to get involved in the Waukesha Parade support and other means of help.
Well, it almost seems like he's getting a little bit cocky and talking down to the witness there as if he actually passed the bar once upon a time. Alexis, how does this type of questioning affect the witness having to listen to him talk to them this way?
So, I mean, when you have a victim, you will always, it doesn't matter which side as an attorney you're on, you have to be very careful when you're questioning them. And in this situation, where you have the victim where the defendant or even the defense attorney is, you have to be very delicate in the questioning because you never want the jury to view it as you're attacking the victim. I mean, the questions that he's asking are very unclear. They're not specific. You know, they don't. You can kind of tell where he's going with it, but as the pastor said, he isn't a doctor. He is really testifying to what he witnessed and not in the capacity of some sort of diagnosis. As well as, remember, this is a pastor, so you want to be very careful that formulating or, giving him questions that seem like you're attacking him because, he is viewed that he was there to not, to help other people in this situation.
Yeah, it always seems that his questions are always going in circles, and that's kind of been the theme every day he's been in court. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Hopefully, we'll go back to that courtroom in Waukesha, Wisconsin in a moment. All right, Alexis, I know we have to sign you off, but before you go, I want to get your final thoughts here. Speed has been talked about how much in this testimony here as the witness recounts what he saw that day. What is standing out to you with this testimony?
Well, first of all, we have a specific eyewitness. I mean, he's saying he identified the defendant in court. That's very strong, although, from an evidence standpoint, it's been proven that eyewitness testimony scientifically is not as reliable, but juries love eyewitness testimony. He eyewitnessed them, as well as the extent of the damage to this vehicle. It really, really stands out.
All right, Alexis. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Great analysis and insight as always. We hope to see you soon. We're going to take a short break here on Law and Crime, but we will be back at the top of the